good people don't smoke marijuana.
I've known Larry for a long time.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana. Radio show. The medical marijuana for you and me. Ah, yeah, the medical marijuana. Whoa, 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 ah, yeah, the medical. It's the medical marijuana show. You will know.
I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you. Hey, boy, don't feel my world untrue. Yeah, I want to talk to you. My world can be true if you do what I tell you to. I want to talk to you.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Medical Marijuana Radio. This one is for Cinco de Mayo 2018. I'm your host, Larry Love. We're here every week to bring you the latest information on the uses of medical cannabis and the fight for recreational cannabis as well. And this info comes from all over the world. Today's guest is Tisha Brick. Tisha is from New Mexico. She has a special needs son who is in the medical cannabis program here, using it for his different symptoms and so forth, and having a problem, of course, with being able to medicate at school. This is an issue that's happening all over the place. It's been worked out in some places like Colorado and Illinois. We're going to talk to Tisha in the second part of the show. But first off, as always, I've got news for you. Okay, so this is probably one of the most important things that happened this week. The hemp industry loses its case against the DEA as federal appeals court says that CBD is a controlled substance. A federal appeals court sided with the Drug Enforcement Administration and upheld its decision that CBD is a Schedule I controlled substance, a major setback for the American hemp industry. The decision issued Monday by a 3-judge panel of the Ninth Circuit in San Francisco means that hemp producers can only sell cannabidiol, CBD, where it is allowed under state law. So it also means that states that allow CBD, even if they don't allow the sale of high THC marijuana, are violating federal law, and the same, federal law, the same as states that allow recreational cannabis. CBD producers who brought the case vowed to appeal. So this was like the Hoban Law Company over in Colorado, and the HIA, which is an organization for hemp. They pushed it a little bit too far, and there was a bad decision. However, nothing changes. A lot of people who have been in the hemp industry for years, they're saying that, it's business as usual. Nothing is different than it was last week. It's always been considered a Schedule I due to the definition. So we'll just have to hang in there, and we'll get Veronica Carpio back again to see what she can tell us about this. And it's who knows if there's funds enough to have the Department of Justice raid little CBD boutiques or whatever. We'll have to stand by and see what's going to happen. Now, here in New Mexico, we have a governor's race coming up in November. Finally, after all these years of having a terrible Republican governor who said when she ran the first time and the second time, if a bill would reach her desk, to turn off the medical cannabis program, she would. And she said she would scuttle the program, and scuttle she did. It has not improved hardly in the last 7 years or so, and hopefully we're going to get a new governor. Well, we're going to get some new governor. Hopefully it won't be Steve Pierce, the Republican, who is totally against medical and recreational cannabis. But Michelle Lujan Grisham is the leading candidate right now. There's a couple of others as well. Jeff Apodaca is one of them who has publicly, stated and campaigning that he is on the side of really a fast track of recreational cannabis and improving the medical program as well. Michelle Lujan Grisham has said in the past that she wants to see more studies and wants to slowly think about recreational cannabis. But there was a meeting of the candidates, a debate, I guess, in Las Cruces earlier in the week. And here's Michelle Lujan Grisham in her own words talking about medical and recreational cannabis at the Las Cruces Forum. So if you want to know what she thinks, here it is.
So on the medical cannabis front, which is not the question, but my 2 minutes, or a minute and 30 seconds, 90 seconds, I had the great honor of carrying that legislation in the Johnson administration. Now, we weren't quite successful in the Johnson administration, but we were successful in the Richardson administration, and that bill, the Aaron Lynn Compassionate Use Act, is actually named for one of my colleagues and best friend's daughters who suffers still today with cancer. It's incredibly important that we protect the medical cannabis efforts and patient access. So, recreational cannabis with the following things can be something that is productive in New Mexico, and I believe that we've got a legislature, including Representative Bill McCamley, who's done incredible work making sure that we can have a balanced effort and lead the country. And here's what it would look like. Again, protect medical cannabis, because if you don't, you will limit and create access problems for your current patient population. Make sure that you're dealing with DWI and intoxication and workers' comp and prevention and workplace safety. We're going to have to deal with discrimination and workplace hiring and firing issues. We're going to have to work on sports issues in colleges. There's a ton of work to be done, but it can be done, and make sure that edibles and prevention and underage use is all addressed. I believe that our legislature can produce a bill that does all those things, and I can sign a recreational cannabis bill.
Well, that's good news. So let's make sure that when they write the bill, that we all have input in it, and make sure we protect, like Michelle Lujan Grisham just said, we have to protect the medical industry. I've been saying that for years about legalizing for adult use. We got to protect it. So legalizing for adult use, the people of Maine legalized for adult use, but the governor LePage vetoed it. But now the House and the Senate overrode Governor LePage's veto of recreational marijuana bill, and it's going to be moving forward. So that's good news. That came from Channel 13 WGME in Augusta. One more story here before we hit some more audio clips. Colorado lawmakers approve a bill for cannabis tasting rooms. Finally, some place for people to imbibe. Colorado lawmakers on Thursday approved pioneering legislation allowing marijuana retailers to establish tasting rooms for customers to consume select products, much like a brewery tap room. The bipartisan measure is believed to be one of the first of its kind in the nation, if not the first. It now goes to Governor John Hickenlooper for his consideration. So let's hope that this moves forward. It's something that is still discriminating against cannabis, because you can certainly walk into a bar, have some alcohol, walk back into your car, and drive home. So, we know that cannabis has better statistics. So, okay, next up. In Arizona, terrible situation. Medical marijuana testing bill dies in the Arizona House from lack of Democratic support. Well, this is the way it's being spun. I don't know what the real deal is. But can you imagine a medical program turning down testing for mold and contaminants and so forth? Unbelievable.
27 states require medical marijuana to undergo laboratory testing for pesticides and mold. But after this vote,
Third reading of Senate Bill 1420.
Arizona will remain one of just 2 states with no testing requirements at all.
They're going to allow something to go untested, unregulated, to have all these chemicals, all this mold that's in there that's actually has been identified. As a matter of fact, I believe it was by your station.
Last year, Arizona's family arranged lab tests on 4 cannabis samples for mold and found 3 of them would not meet standards in other states. 1 had mold levels that were too numerous to count.
Let's make sure the product that they buy isn't going to compound their health.
House Republicans supported SB 1420, but 23 of the 25 Democrats did not.
I absolutely agree it should be tested. The problem is that this bill doesn't quite get it right.
Democratic State Representative Randy Freese says there was too much feedback from dispensaries and other stakeholders that the bill needed fine-tuning.
Because we have a gaping hole, and it causes product to back up on the shelves because the testing isn't working right. That doesn't serve anyone well.
Testing in medical, testing in recreational. We don't want to put chemicals, mold, and yeast and bad things in our bodies. It's just not good. Cannabis is supposed to be healthy for us. We shouldn't be getting sick from it, which some people have, compromised immune systems, and they really need clean medicine. Now, here's one of the most moving pieces that I saw and listened to this week. This is out of New Jersey, a former New Jersey Republican. I'm not sure if he was in the House or whatever, but now he is an MMJ patient in New Jersey, and this is very powerful. Listen to it, and if you have some friends and Republican friends that just still don't get cannabis, this might be something good for them to listen to because it's from one of them.
Listen, I've got 99 problems, but thanks to cannabis therapy, addiction to opioids is not one of them. As someone who suffers from chronic pain, I have all of the opioids in the world at my disposal. Frankly, you could kill an elephant with all of the pills I've taken. In 2011, I developed a debilitating and little-known disease called complex regional pain syndrome. It's a nervous system disorder, much like muscular dystrophy. I struggle with the basics. My speech, my mobility, bathing, cooking, even getting out of bed to dress myself is a struggle. I am a former executive director of the state Republican Party. I'm also a former triathlete, but today I come to you as a medical cannabis user. Medical cannabis is saving me every day, every day. It's saving me from the ravages of my disease. New Jersey's cannabis laws are beyond broken. In fact, they hurt people. Sick people like me must jump through hoops to get the one thing that actually works, which is medical cannabis. Opiate therapy is now our default pathway for anyone in any type of pain. They caused my liver to fail 4 times in 5 years. My life is compromised enough without taking these dangerous and addictive pain meds. And I refuse to spend the rest of my life in some opiate-induced haze. They made me miserable. Tell me, who wants to live like that? Today's an opportunity to chart a new path forward that doesn't make criminals out of folks like myself. The people who benefit most from today's legislation are anyone on the margins, minorities, and very sick people like me. Cannabis reform is no longer a partisan issue. Even now, many Republican elected officials are switching their views as the science has become more clear and people like me come forward. Pharmaceutical companies and their lobbyists work very hard to retain their market share. They regard cannabis as a threat to their bottom line. Just follow the money. But to most of us, this isn't about money at all. Simply put, it's about liberty. The liberty for adults to make our own choices on how we medicate and how we choose to recreate.
Wow. That's a Republican, former head of a Republican something or other in Jersey. This is powerful. You know, it's interesting. They're against it until it's time for them to use it, or someone in their family gets sick. It's too bad other people can't learn from others. This gentleman just did a very powerful thing, and I hope that more Republicans will start supporting cannabis as a medicine. Last week we played some clips about Las Vegas, Nevada, and that they don't want to allow people on cannabis or being impaired to gamble and so forth. Now here's Caesars dropping their pre-employment marijuana testing because they can't find people to work. You know, everybody uses cannabis, and they're in a recreational state and a medical state in Nevada. Here's this.
Businesses are choosing not to test potential employees for marijuana, including some resorts on the Las Vegas Strip. Caesars is one of them. Their spokesperson tells us that they only drug test employees if they have a reason to believe that they've used drugs. The Associated Press reports some hotels are skipping the tests because managers are having a tough time finding workers who actually don't use marijuana. MGM Resort says that they're still conducting pre-employment marijuana tests.
So they're conducting pre-employment, but then it's okay to work. Anyway, it should be okay. It's no different than, well, it actually is different. It's better than if you have a backache and you're sitting all day dealing cards and you're taking oxys or Valium or something. So obviously cannabis is way better. So we talked earlier about the Department of Justice's decision on CBD oil. And this is out of Wisconsin, this report.
It's a big curveball for some state farmers who were preparing to grow industrial hemp this season now that it's illegal in Wisconsin.
Many are planning to produce the crop for the making of CBD oil, but the State Department of Justice is now telling them those plans are illegal. Emily Fannin is digging deeper into what legal action may now be in the works.
The state has received nearly 350 applications from farmers to grow industrial hemp. 3 days before the deadline to apply for one, the Department of Justice put out a memo reminding farmers growing hemp for CBD oil purposes is illegal. The Wisconsin Farm Bureau says they believed it was okayed through the legislative process.
It was openly discussed that CBD oil was going to be produced. So to do it this late and not give anybody a heads up, especially with all the plan that needs to occur this, is incredibly disheartening.
CBD is a cannabis compound used by some medical professionals to treat things like anxiety and depression. The DOJ sees CBD as dangerous. A spokesperson from the department says the guidance recently issued does not contradict state law. It reinstates state and federal law on the issue of CBD oil, and it's intended to assist local law enforcement who have raised questions on the topic. For Jeff Ditzenberger, CBD oil turned his life around.
Not taking any of the prescription drugs that I was on. My anxiety is pretty much gone. I haven't had a migraine since I started taking it.
Some believe this could have legal ramifications because some have already planned or already invested thousands or even millions in this industry.
If I'm a farmer and I was contracted with somebody who wants to produce CBD oil, not only am I looking at making a very good profit by doing this, but now that's been taken away from me. And in a market where commodity prices and milk prices are absolutely horrible, this is just another horrible thing for farmers to have happen to them.
And now many farmers are left scrambling.
I think it was a really backdoor move, and it's made a lot of us quite irritated, to say the least.
So a lot of stuff to be figured out and worked out. Again, a lot of hemp activists are saying business as usual because nothing has really changed. Moving over to California, you remember Tupperware parties? Well, now they're doing it with cannabis products and educating people and helping people for the first time use cannabis. It's very interesting. Here's this report from Cali.
Well, now that marijuana is legal here in California, a growing number of women are trying it for the very first time, and many of them are doing it together in the safety and comfort of their own homes. Tonight, KCAL 9's Peter Doubt takes a closer look at the growing trend of pot parties.
The one way to buy Tupperware is at a Tupperware home party.
Move over, Tupperware.
If you haven't heard of Mary Kay, you soon will.
Out of the way, Mary Kay. Now, more than ever before, women are socializing and shopping with cannabis.
It's a blast.
Anita Boris is one of several women gathered at this home in West Hollywood for a pot party. There's plenty of food, and as you'd expect, plenty of marijuana. Not only buds, but a variety of edibles, patches, even beauty products.
It's amazing for menstrual cramps.
Here, women of all backgrounds can sample and ask questions together without having to visit a dispensary. Boris says she's only smoked pot a few times in her life, so came to the party to find out what else cannabis has to offer.
You get to learn, you get to try new products, and you get to be in a place where you're not embarrassed or uncomfortable to talk about things.
As the stigma of marijuana fades in states like California, where the drug is now legal for adults, recent surveys show that women are among the fastest growing segment of cannabis consumers. And they're using it to treat a wide range of symptoms, including anxiety, PMS, and nausea.
Right now, like women in cannabis is flying high.
Amber Abbott says she's been using marijuana for years and enjoys educating women about its health benefits.
You feel safe in an environment with other women, talking about your experiences, the different strains you should use for what ails you or what doesn't.
This one has CBD water, right?
But these types of ganja gatherings may not be what you think. Many of these products do not contain THC, but rather the non-psychoactive element of marijuana called CBD, which is used to alleviate pain and induce calm.
So women coming to these parties aren't necessarily going to walk out if you're stoned?
Most of them don't. It's mostly about health benefits. Getting high is just an added bonus if you want to. You don't have to get high.
Either way, pot parties are becoming increasingly popular in Southern California.
This has many, many more benefits than Tupperware.
Jenny Volodarsky is now focusing her party planning business on bringing cannabis products and educators right into people's homes.
Every detail we will take care of and make sure that it's a seamless and informative or just a fun night.
And a fun night is what Anita Boris says it's all about, surrounded by friends and a whole lot of cannabis.
This is my first pot party, but definitely not my last.
Peter Doubt, KCAL 9 News.
Okay, and now before we take a little break and come back with our guest Tisha Brick, another family, many families are fighting to be able to have their children who are legally in the medical cannabis programs to be able to dose at school. We want to keep our kids in schools. This is the most important thing going on. And it really is discriminating to not allow a cannabis patient to get their medicine when there's nurses and so forth that can give medicine with other afflictions to people. So here is a Rhode Island family going through the same thing. They are fighting to change the law there. And we're going to talk to Tisha Brick after this and tell you about what's going on here in New Mexico, fighting for Anthony. Here is this report from Rhode Island.
Live at 5, we told you about an 11-year-old Coventry girl who takes medical cannabis to prevent seizures.
New at 6, we talked to a state lawmaker who wants to make it okay for her to have her medication at school. Caroline Goggin has the details. Caroline?
Shannon and Mike, imagine your child suffered from a debilitating condition. You have a cure, but they can't take it at school. That's the reality for the Minda family, and now they're hoping to change it.
Jaden Minda was just 9 years old when she began taking medical cannabis to treat her seizures.
There's two. Everything that you knew in the past and believed in and based your career on failed.
Jaden's mom, Liz, tells us pharmaceutical medicine didn't stop the seizures and actually had severe side effects.
There's one.
So she switched to medical cannabis oil.
Okay, is that better?
It's allowed Jaden to go back to school, but
right now my husband and I have to be 15 minutes away from the school.
The school district tells us a federal issue prohibits the nurse from giving Jaden her medicine. Only her parents can give it to her off of school grounds.
Some sort of a solution.
Now State Representative Scott Slater is stepping in to help.
I have two daughters, 8 and 5, and I know how important it is that when they go to school, I know that they're safe.
A proponent of medical marijuana for years at the State House, he's introduced a bill that would allow cannabis in an oil or edible form to be administered on school grounds.
To a child that maybe is on the verge of a seizure, and it would prevent that and allow them to continue with their day.
But there is opposition. The National Education Association of Rhode Island telling us our union represents a number of school nurse teachers. And as licensed caregivers, they are prohibited from administering any drug that does not have FDA approval.
I understand that concern. They have concern about their licensing. I'm not looking to put any nurses in a bad position, like where they have to choose their job or their license. My thing is to bring awareness. There's much more dangerous drugs that they are administering. And so I'm not sure why we can't administer cannabis, especially when it's legal on a state level.
So how was school today? Can you tell me?
Liz Minda has been a nurse since 1977. She understands their predicament, but is still pleading with them, not only for Jaden, but for any other child or family undergoing the same battle.
So my advice to the nursing profession, don't forget why we go into nursing. We go into nursing to help people.
The National Education Association of Rhode Island tells us moving forward, it's eager to be part of any discussion that may find common ground. Rep. Slater tells me his bill was heard and will now be held for further study.
So this is an issue everywhere, and we're going to be right back with Tisha Brick to talk about her fight for her son to use their medicine at school. We'll be right back after this.
It's all about the 420 MMJRadio.
PTSD, MS, glaucoma, seizures. All of these diseases have seen beneficial impacts with medical marijuana. It's outrageous that the federal government is saying there's no medical use. And until they move from Schedule 1, they are literally saying that.
Help the average person understand the difference between a Schedule 1 drug and a Schedule 2 drug.
Well, it's really simple. Schedule 1 drug has no medical use, and a Schedule 2 drug has medical uses.
Marijuana does not meet the definition of Schedule 2, and you can create those products, and we should do that.
Clearly, Schedule 2 is easier to access.
It's a small difference.
Well, then why are you resisting that difference then?
To deny people medicine that can help them based upon some idea that this might create a problem or a slippery slope, that undermines the common sense of things we already are doing.
It's stuck in the 60s. People wanted to demonize this as a hippie drug that had no value and not actually study it.
Have you written to the president or asked
Yes,
the
they'll
president?
say there's not a body of research that shows the medical effects in U.S. literature.
Legalizing marijuana, whether it's medical marijuana or recreational use. Right now, that is not federal policy.
Well, surprise, surprise, it's a Schedule 1 drug. Of course there's not a body of research because you've precluded that research from being done. It's a catch-22.
The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana. Radio show.
Hi, this is Grace from Argantica. You're listening to Medical Marijuana Radio. Did I do it?
And we're back and online today with a very important story. I have Tisha Brick, whose son Anthony is in the medical cannabis program here in New Mexico and is having problems at school. Of course, we all know that some schools won't let people medicate. So welcome, Tisha, and tell me about your story and about Anthony and how cannabis came into his life and your life.
Yes. Hi. Thank you. Thank you very much for doing this with me. So Anthony had originally been going through hospitals many years before we got him on the medical cannabis. His diagnosis wasn't obtained very easily either. It took a lot of fighting and a lot of going back and forth through many different doctors and psychiatrists and other agencies and clinics and programs, and a lot of other pharmaceutical drugs as well, to get to the point where we got Anthony on medical cannabis. It was our last resort because he was not getting better. His conditions were not improving, and they were worsening.
So he actually has multiple conditions, right?
He does, yes. He has undifferentiated schizophrenia, which is an ultra-rare diagnosis. I know a lot of people have commented on that, and we did not obtain that diagnosis easily at all. It took 6 doctors from 6 different sub-medical fields to be able to come together and do a bunch of tests and data and come together and come up with that diagnosis. It was really difficult to get, but that's what they agreed on.
Was that
and
here?
So did Social Security.
Was that here in New Mexico?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that was in Albuquerque. And so he also has post-traumatic stress disorder. He also has ADHD, the combined type, and he also has a little bit of some developmental delays going on.
So pharmaceuticals were not doing it for Anthony. So
No, they almost killed him. I mean, they put him on stuff that was meant for I don't even think it was meant for adults to be on, but they had him on these horrible medicines that were pretty much just destroying him. And again, I mean, he was doped all the time. He couldn't function. He had these terrible tremors. I mean, he was just, it seemed like every week we were in the hospital, and every other day in and out of ERs and staying there for, 24, 44, 36 hours at a time trying to get help.
So how did you get to cannabis? So what something that you saw on the internet that a doctor recommended? How did it come?
No, I had been actually doing my own personal research on cannabis for quite some time before that, and I had found some studies that were being done by some doctors and scientists in other countries, and I was just trying to figure out how I could get my son on it, because there were some studies being done on schizophrenia and how medical cannabis was really actually helping patients with that disorder rather than harming them, contrary to the past knowledge of it, in a psychological manner. And so we had a pediatric neurologist in Albuquerque who we met and who had been following Anthony for a little while he was in and out of hospitals. And, he actually, one day I just, we've reached the end of our shtick, and we didn't know what else to do. And I was pleading with him. I said, Anthony is worsening, and these hospitals aren't helping. The drugs aren't helping. I said, what can we do to help this kid? As a mama, I'm just like watching my little boy go downhill, and these people are telling me that my only hope was to just lock him up for life and leave him there, and I was not going to do that at all.
Did you find did you find a lot of resistance from the psychological industry? They seem to be against cannabis for quite some time.
Yes, I did. So when Dr. Foster announced, trying cannabis, and I agreed with him, we actually, had let these hospitals and psychiatrists and stuff know that we were going to be pulling him off of the pharmaceutical medicines, and we would not obviously be bringing Anthony back to those programs any further. And so they actually called CYFD on me and had me fully investigated for it. And they reported this doctor to the medical board, tried to get him for, medical neglect and all that, but it never panned out. So, yeah, that was how we got Anthony on medical cannabis. And it took some work. It took some work for, over a good year or so to actually get Anthony to where he is today. We started him off.
What was first of all, you have to qualify for one of the recommended conditions. Yes. So what was the condition that Anthony was able to get in?
They chose to go ahead and allow it for his PTSD.
Okay, which is probably a really good way to get in, because I think there's more people in the program with PTSD than any other condition. So tell me about the first time you were able to give him cannabis and what the effect was like, and what did you see?
Sure. So when I started going about this journey, I mean, it was really like walking blind through this. You know, I had no idea what I was doing, but I just went into, a dispensary as we got our cards, and I started kind of telling them a little bit about Anthony and what I was, what if they could help me figure out what might help him, and they suggested, some edibles at first, but Anthony wouldn't. He tried them, and he would just, spit them back out and kind of vomit. He didn't like the taste. So the first time I gave him cannabis was a CBD edible in the form of chocolate, and he didn't do it. So then they recommended Rick Simpson oil.
Right, that's
and
a
maybe
full,
trying to put that into his food.
A full extract cannabis oil, which is the whole plant. So you have to be very careful, of course, when you give someone strong oil like that. So did you start like with a really, really small dose to make sure that...
yeah. They were really good about, because I mean, I told them that, this is a kid, and they were really helpful in trying to help me figure out, just by giving him just a very, very, very tiny amount of this into like his yogurt or something like that. And, once again, we were unsuccessful because he could taste this, and he doesn't like the taste of the medicine. So, I put my heads together with some of these guys and came up with the idea of putting it in a capsule so that he couldn't taste it. And it was really, really expensive at first as well. I mean, it really broke me,
Wow,
and it still does to this day, because, I mean, you think about it, the whole plant oil extract is the most expensive form of it, and rightfully so. It's the purest form of it. And so, you were paying, $50 to $100 for, a couple of syringes at a time, and that wouldn't last but maybe a few days.
I see. Well, there are people like you. Take a deep breath.
No,
Tisha.
it's fine. It's fine.
There are people in your same situation where they're making it at home, and you can do that quite easily.
Yes.
And prices have come down a bit, on the oil.
Yeah,
I've been making
definitely.
my own oil at home for 8 years, I guess now. And capsules really are probably the best medicine and the best way to take it, just for the reasons that you just said. You can just swallow a capsule. The patient's not going to taste anything. You might come up with a little burp after a little while where you taste the medicine. That's telling you that it's starting to get through your system. So again, starting, especially with edibles and oil, starting very, very low is definitely the way to go, because if a patient has a bad reaction for getting to, maybe too much of a psychoactive effect the first time, they're going to be reluctant to go back. So tell me about when you first got to the point to where you were seeing Anthony getting a good effect and what it was doing for him.
Well, we saw relief right off the bat with the Rick Simpson oil, as I told you, and we were very impressed with it. After a few weeks of having Anthony on that, my family, my friends, some of his, people who know him really well, we started to notice immediately that it was really doing some beneficial things, but it wasn't quite where we wanted it. So again, it took a good year or two to get him to where he was, but we got it to where we dosed him. He's still dosed very low on this medicine, but we decided to go ahead and use both CBD and THC on a 1-to-1 ratio, because we found that those two work better together rather than trying to separate one or the other when it comes to Anthony's complex situation. And so again, with the capsules, I make my own oil at home. I make all of it at home. I use coconut oil to help dilute it and make it last, for about a good 2 weeks per batch. And we also have the indica being used for him during his behavioral crises, and that's the medicine that I was using in school for him. So when he would have these severe behavioral crises that he could not be calmed down from, rather than calling cops or ambulances or having him hauled off to a hospital, I would come in with that medicine bag and I would administer about 40 milligrams of indica oil, and usually within 15 minutes Anthony was able to be calmer and for the most part resume functioning in school.
Sure. So was this happening at school? And let me also ask you this. Have you tried any of the sprays that are around now that maybe could take effect a little bit faster than waiting 15 minutes? Have you tried any of those?
Yes, we have tried several forms of the medicine, and we have found that the oil is the most effective in calming him down. None of the other medicines, although they might be faster acting, they don't quite measure up to what he needed. The oils seem to be in their purest form as they are and as they're dosed. They seem to be the most effective way to get him completely calm, where he doesn't, relapse or go back into another episode.
Sure. So have you figured out a regimen to where, how many times a day, how many hours between, doses and so forth? And of course, now this is all going to come, back to the school question, how many times a day does he need to take it, and how many times would he have to take it at school? And I know you had a problem with that. So tell me about the school thing now.
Yes, so Anthony does have a routine dose that he takes every day, whether he's in school or not. He takes 10 milligrams of CBD oil in the morning, and he takes another 10 milligrams, about 3 p.m. or 3:30, after school, and then he takes, another 20 milligrams, at night, and then he takes that in combination with a night dose of indica as well. So really, the only time that he was requiring any medical cannabis at school, again, was only in the rare event that he had a terrible behavioral crisis that he could not calm down from. Because not always does he require it in school. The only time that they would call me is if he just was so out of control with his behaviors that, I'd have to come in and give him this. And so, again, it's not like they would be giving it to him, every day unless he's having behavioral crises every day. And in that case, then it became the question of what we could do differently in school to better address what was triggering him, which, there's been a lot of problems with his school aside from the medical cannabis. That's not the only reason that I pulled Anthony out of school.
So go ahead, tell us about that.
So there were other issues that were going on with this school. The cannabis issue actually wasn't even the beginning issue. We appeared to be having problems with some of the administration starting to criminalize Anthony for his disabilities. We had administrators coming in on his behavioral crises and threatening him with assault charges. Stuff like that. I started to stand up and advocate for him during that time, and I tried to advocate that the school needed to follow, the protocol that was set in place for children with disabilities and following his IEP and BIP, and they actually began to meet me with a significant amount of resistance, and that is when a few weeks later they decided to announce that they were no longer going to allow Anthony to have his cannabis. And also in conjunction with trying to issue me like a background check. They want, in order for me to come onto school grounds, I would have had to have filled out a background check because they were offended by my presence. And on this background check form, it was also requiring that I would, that I would sign off on my right to be able to distribute my son's medicine to him. And that's where I continued to protest and advocate. And over a period of time, it eventually got so bad that I had to pull Anthony out of school for his safety. Not only would they not allow me to have his medicine on school grounds or administer it to him, but then they were not willing to deal with his behavioral crises in a safe and appropriate manner. So, and they refused to sit down and meet with me. They refused to work with me, and eventually they just literally wouldn't respond to me. They, email after email after email I sent to them, and they just ignored me and eventually blocked my communication, and then moved to ban me from campus, and eventually disenrolled Anthony from school. They had CYFD called on me falsely, trying to get Anthony taken out of the home. They reported that I'd starved him to death. I mean, this stuff, it was crazy, the stuff that was going on. So all of it together just, really, really infuriated me. And I brought a due process hearing lawsuit, which is public, against the school, which we're still very much involved in right now. So even if, the magical, string got pulled and they got Anthony his medicine, he still wouldn't be able to return to school right away due to the large large amount of damaging things that were done by the school administrators and a lot of the team to both of us.
So where does it stand today? He's not in school. He's home. Tell me where it stands and what legally are you trying to do, and is someone helping you?
Yeah, we've been having issues with trying to find lawyers who can consistently stay involved because it's such a huge and complex case. And there's a lot of controversy around the medical cannabis thing. Not a lot of people are very familiar with it. So that aspect I'm actually having a lot of difficulty with, which is why I'm glad we now have all these advocacy groups helping us, so that we can better address, the legalities on it. But as it stands, Anthony, I won't take Anthony back to school until, these people are held accountable fully for all of the laws that they broke and all of the wrong that they did, number one. But number two, they have to be able to allow Anthony to be in that school, as I mentioned on the news, without being discriminated upon, and to have his medicine, which they still to this day protest that they cannot do, due to being subject to supposedly losing their federal funding or whatever. They're afraid that, they'll all lose their jobs or whatever, but, we continue to try to educate them, and they just ignore it. So Anthony, I won't take him back to school, and we're still very much in this due process hearing, and the hearing is actually set for August 20th right now.
Wow, so
and that's a public hearing.
Yeah, such a long time away. Now you're not the only family that has gone through this problem about medicating a child at school, especially with other children with seizure condition and so forth that most people know about. I think there was one in Illinois and I know there was one in Colorado. So have you looked into those cases and did that set precedent? Because it's all about the federal thing. So
yes.
What have you found in looking at other states, how they're solving the problem?
Yeah, so what I'm seeing, which there's a large controversy going on where schools are saying, yeah, but I'm like, no, that this case with Ashley Surin in Illinois was the whole reason that I decided to go ahead and start trying to get the news to pay attention to our case as well, because I've reached out to multiple lawmakers in our state, including our Congresswoman Michelle Lujan Grisham, in trying to get them to look at this federal law under IDEA that states that you're not supposed to be prohibiting a student's medicine no matter what part of the Controlled Substances Act it's under, and the same with her parents. I think that, at first they were asking, hey, just, we're not asking you guys to administer it. We're just asking that you allow us to be able to administer it. And then it went into, when the school got all the attention they did, and they went and they were successful in, suing the state, the school, and getting in front of a judge in federal court, the federal judge said the same thing. So the school actually, is allowing Ashley Surin to have her medicine and allowing their staff to administer it, because now they're realizing that they might have been wrong on their approach in saying that, these faculty members would be subject to, criminal penalties, which they wouldn't be. So I agree. I think that is supposed to be nationwide, from what I'm understanding, that any state that's under the medical marijuana program would also be subject to that same policy in place. And you're right. I know that there's Colorado, which allows their students to have medical cannabis administered by the faculty at school too. So I question why we are any different.
This is where the discrimination comes in. We're talking about a legal medicine here in the state of New Mexico and in all the medical cannabis states. It's a legal medicine. So why should we be discriminated against? It's just as legal as taking an Oxycontin or Neurontin or any of those pharmaceuticals.
Yes.
Okay, so medical cannabis patients are being discriminated in all different sections of life, so to speak, and even to have to pay tax on medical cannabis is a discrimination, because we don't pay tax on our other medicines. So there's a lot to be worked out. So what do you think is the fix for your situation that would also obviously help people in the future? What has to be done?
Well, again, I've mentioned that, I've teamed up with Lindsay Sledge, and we're both working together to fight for the same cause. We both discussed, what our ultimate outcome would be out of this as far as approaching the medical cannabis aspect. And as I mentioned on the news, and she feels the same way, we want all students statewide and possibly in every other state, but we can only work on our own to be able to go to school and take their medicine at school without discrimination or repercussion. We actually want those, the school nurses should be able to administer it just like they administer every other medicine to every other kid. Like you said, Ritalin or OxyContin or anything else that a kid might need for a medical condition that is necessary. And that is our ultimate goal. We want our lawmakers to retract, the laws that they have in place that discriminate upon these medicines, and they allow schools to discriminate upon the medicine. We want that changed, and we want it changed as quickly as possible, and so that, Anthony and Paloma and other students can go back to school and get the education and the socialization that they so rightly deserve.
Absolutely. Well, you're fighting not only for your own son and everybody else. That's to come out and do this for everybody is quite amazing, and I hear your passion and so forth. So, I thank you for that. Now, this coming next Friday on the 11th, there was supposed to be here in New Mexico a twice a year meeting of the Medical Cannabis Board of Doctors. It's the Medical Cannabis Board meeting where people, talk about things like this in a public microphone here, afterwards and so forth. But they also present for new conditions and so forth. And this morning we found out that it got canceled because a lot of the doctors that were on this panel of boards have dropped off for some reasons, and I think most of the reason is they have to do a lot of work as a volunteer, and they go through all this and they make recommendations to the medical cannabis program here in New Mexico, and then the Secretary of Health, who is actually an attorney and not a doctor or a healthcare giver, just arbitrarily just says no, and so all their hard work has been just thrown down the drain. So they canceled the meeting because they don't have a quorum. They don't have enough doctors on the board, and of course I blame the current situation on the medical cannabis program here in New Mexico on the governor of our state, who said when she was running, she said that she told everybody in the state, 8 years ago, however long that was, that if she got into office, she would scuttle the program, and she did it. She put a hold on it. She put the brakes on it. People are suffering. Nothing can get done. You're looking for a quick fix of a medical problem, and in politics, there's no such thing as a quick fix, especially when there's haters running the program. And I say that, I'm saying this, not you, not just Susana Martinez and not just the Attorney Secretary of Health, but the people. There's some people that work at the actually at the medical cannabis program that get mad at me all the time because I tell them they're not doing their job properly. There should be a way of getting sick and hospice people into the program in 3 days, in 2 days, in 1 day, and there isn't, and people have died. And I'm hoping that this new election of a governor that we're having in a few months, we're going to get somebody in there that is going to make this program work, make it easier to make changes, and make it patient-centric, which is something that I think is really, really important. So I will let people know, because the not the news conference, but the DOH meeting was canceled next Friday. You were going to hold a news conference at that time. And of course, we're not sure at this point if it'll be up here or where you're going to hold it, but I'll let people know later on in the week and post it when you figure out when this news conference is going to be.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we still, as far as I know, we still, despite that meeting being canceled, we still very much want to have our press conference. We're hoping to keep it on the same day and time, but perhaps maybe the location might be changed, maybe perhaps to Albuquerque. I know that there was some possible talk about another parent who actually wanted to come out and speak about their story as well. So that might be in the works, but as far as I know, we have not canceled our press conference. It just might be a different location because we still want to address our issues, our stories, and what we're wanting, and we still want to address our lawmakers. And we still very much feel that I agree with you. The change needs to happen sooner than later because we're just taking too long to address issues like this. And in the meantime, people like our children are still very much suffering, and that is just not right. They need to address this now, regardless of whether, there's two doctors, one doctor there. I'm like, if Illinois could make the change that they made so quickly, I don't understand why we can't.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? The doctor's oath is, first do no harm. And I think that even if you're an attorney and you're in charge of the health of a whole state, I think maybe she should first do no harm, and that's not what they've been doing. So, Tisha, thank you so much for your passion. Fight on, and we will cover your news conference whenever it will be. And thanks for telling your story today.
Oh no, thank you, and I will keep you updated, and we will let everybody know, when that news conference, where it'll take place. So if anything changes, we'll let you know. Thank you so much for taking the time to allow me to talk about what's going on, sir. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, it's an important issue. We'll be right back.
Yes, it is.
We'll be right back after this. Thanks so much.
Yo, me a yellow man. Wow. Rustin, you want what the case, boss? No, what is? Why something and thing. You know, see me lion? Sure. Tell them I want murder style.
Me get me passport and me get me visa. Me take a taxi, gonna Palisada, and jump on one ear, Jamaica. Then me fly in America.
Murder.
Me go the nice up the area. Go let me tell you, me go nice up the area. And when me say, I beg you get up, stand up. I beg you stand up for your right.
Black people,
get up, stand up.
Black on your white.
Go stand up for your right. I beg you throw down your gun and throw down your knife. Throw down your gun and throw down your knife. Say come black people, let us all unite. Whether you're black or whether you're white, get up, stand up.
Ain't that so me thing no say.
Beg you stand up for your right. Beg you get up, stand up.
Ain't that so me say.
I beg you stand up for your right. Come on the queen in England and sit down on throne. She don't know them a Engman a pan the stone. The queen they a England and sit down on throne. I don't know say them big shot a pope a bone. You get up, stand up.
Ain't that so me say.
Beg you stand up for your right.
Black or you white or you fair.
Get up, stand up.
Yeah, I so me say.
Beg you stand up for your right.
Do it, John.
Come on now, we know where we are going. Say we know where we are from. All of we come from the African land. Although a yellow man have a different complexion. I tell you, beg you get up, stand up. I beg you stand up for your right. Beg you get up, stand up. I beg you stand up for your right. I beg you throw down your knife and throw down your gun. Cause this is our island in the sun. Just get one girl and go have some fun. Hey, get one girl and go have some fun. I'm your go nice up, jam down. And when we say, I beg you get up, stand up.
Black or you white.
I beg you stand up for your right.
So we're gonna unite.
medical marijuana. The medical marijuana radio show.
Well, I want to thank Tisha Brick for standing up for her rights, the rights of her son, and the rights of other people in the same situation. Stand up for your rights and fight. It's very, very important. I also want to thank my two radio mentors, both with the initials HS. Thank you for your inspiration. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, if you are a patient, a mom, if you're an advocate, an activist, if you have a product to sell, a story to tell, it's info@mmjradio.com. Again, info@mmjradio.com. If you'd like to hear some of our old shows, we've been doing this for about 9 seasons now. It's medicalmarijuanaradio.com. Our YouTube channel is LSLove88. On SoundCloud and Spreaker, we're MMJ Radio. We have CannabisTube.net. Is a great place to be watching all kinds of cannabis videos and shows. On Spreaker and iHeartRadio, we're on the iHeartRadio. It's the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. And on Now TV, we're on channel 937. And coming soon to everywhere, thecannachannel.com.
Shalom.
Oh yeah, and fuck Lion Trump.
Bapu buyeta, shuyeta, bapu dini, sabapu bapu bapu bapu.